Hello YouTube, this is Elwirfy and today we're going to be taking a look at some ideas of, how do you utilize and get the most out of your units. Now we already talked about combat squads, and I found that, just like in the combat squad video, it is important to think about how, you include your units and what kind of units to be including in that. But, there's another thing that, people tend not to touch on is, what do you do some people are like me, and when you buy the box, you make the models, you don't necessarily know how the game works yet, and so you realize you made a bit too many normal units. You don't really have quite the heavy weapon firepower in order to take down things that you'd really want to take out. Like, for example, I have one squad designated as like a flamethrower squad. We have one squad that's dedicated as like an anti-tank squad or monstrous creature with that melta gun, good for light vehicles and stuff. Then we have the missile launcher squad, that takes out the heavy vehicles, and of course any lighter vehicles or monsters that would also be, a bit of a threat to the, to what I'm doing. But with resources like this, for example, this is an army that I could 100% field, and we have 3 units up to possibly, if you split them up into combat squad, 6 units for scoring. You got some heavy, you have some Terminators to really deal out that extra firepower that you need and extra good damage. And you have a basic, captain who's going to be able to be in charge of it all. And then you got a Rhino and another Rhino, so you got some transports. You can get your guys onto the objectives as needed. Terminators have to walk in this particular scenario, which is not ideal. Ideally, you do want to drop pod them most of the time, unless you find you're bringing like a dreadnought or something that really needs to be drop podded, in which case you could think about adding on the drop pod if you wanted to, but I'm leaving that over there for now because also I'm gluing it because something broke. So fun times with that. Alright, so what exactly would you want to do in order to make sure that your squads are more optimal? Well, if you knew that you were going to take a drop pod and you knew that you were going to be using the drop pods primarily against enemy infantry, what I would do is I would take this squad, we're going to pull out a Marine, and we're just going to slide this guy over, right? Because in every tactical squad, unless it changes, and which I'll tell you what we'll do if it changes, but from what I know, you can have up to 2 special weapons in a 10-man squad of tactical Marines. What does that mean? Well, that means for this squad, it's all bolters, This is the group that would be, one of the groups that would be in a Rhino. This would be in a drop pod because you're going to be dropping it, and you're going to get, the template of the flamethrower, and you have the anti-vehicle or heavy thing power of the melta in one squad, and that's really what's ideal. If you're going to be doing a drop pod with Marines, you really want to have all the weapons. Now, in a perfect world, I'm not quite sure if the rules are changing or not, but say we take this guy out and we put in our missile launcher, then we would be incredibly powerful. Then I would definitely be dropping this squad in the drop pods, and then both of our basic Marine squads would just be going around in the Rhinos, which I feel would be, the most efficient way to handle it, provided you were going to be taking out like a big creature or something. You really want to have all your firepower in one spot, not necessarily because they're all going to get killed, but because it's too easy to, focus fire-wise. It's tough to focus fire. But if you have all these guys all landing behind in the back, then you can get all of your guys to pretty much do significantly more damage than if you have to walk them up, or they're spread out, so that way they're not functioning as one unit. That is one of the reasons why people do like to run tactical squads over combat squads. That's simply because when you're fighting as one unit, you roll more dice at once, and I don't know, it's just, for me anyway, the more dice I'm rolling, the better I tend to do. If I'm rolling one die, granted the odds are the same no matter how many dice you're rolling, I just feel like I'm more powerful when I'm rolling lots of dice on the field. Also, it's just more fun in general to have kind of the death squad, and then you'd have your scrub arm, you're going around capturing objectives unit. And also the range of the missile launcher is not as far as I thought in playing my games, so I find that bringing him closer would probably be good, but he needs that protection of having other heavy weapons to get the job done, so that way he's not just on his own to be singled out, which would also be really terrible. Now, what are the Terminators out for if this is about tactical squads? Well, the Terminators are necessary to talk about how in the Blood Angels army, generally, you're not going to be running Terminators. I only ran Terminators because I needed one. I wanted to try something new because I've never actually used Terminators before the second battle report. But I also found that the Terminators, they're slow. All right, if you're not dropping them in, or they're not going to come in a Land Raider, which I don't own a Land Raider, then it's going to be kind of tough to utilize these guys. These are kind of like for fun. If you're going to do something thematic or something, then you bring Terminators. But as it stands, Terminators generally aren't necessary unless you're in a smaller army, because Terminators still have the 2-up armor save. And in smaller battles where this is like, okay, so for example, this squad would be 140 points. This squad would be 140 points. So that's going to be 280 for those two. And then this one would be, let's see, 140 plus 15. So that's going to be 155 for that. And then 200 for this. And 45 for each of those. So another 90. Chaplain's 115 or 110, I think. So my point is, it's about a 1,000 point army. And in a 1,000 point army, where you're mainly going to want to have roll a lot of dice, in my opinion, playing games, I liked how in my game when I was playing, I was rolling, when these guys are in rapid fire range, 16 dice. In this case, though, it would be more like 18 dice, actually, having 9 bolters in one squad, which is nice. I really like that. So I like being able to roll a lot of dice, but at the same time, I'm not afraid to acknowledge the fact that, there's something to be said for Terminators who are able to dish out the damage. Plus, he's got a power weapon, the sword. It's a standard shooty Terminators. Generally, assault Terminators are better, but I got these guys from the Black Reach starter box set, which there just weren't assault Terminators. They just didn't exist as part of the box, so couldn't really do them. Had to go with shooting Terminators, which I like these guys. I think they look pretty awesome. They can be painted. Again, over the summer, that's probably realistically when I would go to paint them. If I do it earlier, or feel like doing it earlier, I'll do it. But, the minor detailing on like the shoulder pads and stuff, and making sure all the guns are black, because they all got spray painted red. So I actually individually went out, hand painted all the guns. So that was nice. And obviously painting the symbol, did that myself. Really like that. So like the minor details of painting, I do actually want to make a video about that later. But for now, back on topic. Sorry, went on a bit of a tangent. Pretty much, how are you going to utilize your forces? So say, we have the Rhino with the Marine Squad with all bolters, and the second Rhino with Marine Squad and all bolters. And then we have this force coming in, via drop pod to do all the heavy damage. These two Rhinos are pretty much going to be here simply as a distraction. It's good to have, in my opinion, a tank on the battlefield, because you get the presence, you feel the presence of there being a tank. If you don't have a tank on the battlefield, in my opinion, then you're not going to be as, like, say, we just don't have them. Like, let's ignore the fact that they're just here for transport. And it's not like they're doing lots of damage. That's not what they're there for. They're there to protect the Marines. Because say you have this force coming at you. Well, that's just a lot of fodder. One good blast is going to take these guys out. But if you really think about it, what does it look like when you deploy? You have that. You have that. These guys actually start off of the field. So realistically here, let's move this. Realistically, in a smaller game, and this is for smaller game tactics, you have something like this. Maybe he'd be in the middle. Maybe he'd be off, hiding somewhere. And then you'd have your Terminators, all lined up, ready to go. And that'd be it. That'd be what you have on the field to mess around with. You'd probably have one Rhino that's, driving off that way, one Rhino driving off that way, splitting your forces as maybe these guys march up the middle, ready to kind of take on the enemy HQ choice head on with your HQ choice. And you have the Terminators supporting you. And that's good. That's completely fine, because keep in mind you have the drop pod that's going to come in. And you have 30 Marines or 3 tactical squads that are ready to deal out some firepower. 3 tactical squads is about optimal. Again, I wouldn't probably buy any more tactical squads unless something came up. Because again, in my army, I'm going to find a way to utilize the Death Company. and make them a little more efficient. Might be thinking about dropping them in. They can't deep strike, but just thinking about maybe putting 10 in a drop pod, or 9 with a chaplain, and maybe making more chaplains and such, because there's a way to do it. And I've actually recently seen a game where this was utilized quite well, because they put a chaplain in each of their squads, which actually greatly increased their ability. And I've been playing them a little bit wrong. Turns out each guy should roughly be rolling about 4 dice. I was rolling 3 dice for them, so that's a significant change. If you got 10 guys who are all swinging, kind of significant. Anyway, back on track. So yeah, if you can, try and make as big of a death ball, if you're lacking firepower, because that's the thing. Okay, so say we had split them up. We had maybe the flamethrower coming down, and then we had like the multi-gun and the missile launcher. Well, say this gets blown up and all the crew dies. Well, you lost one of your heavy weapons and they didn't get to fire. Or same thing over here. Maybe you lose a heavy weapon and it doesn't get to fire. But with the drop pod, they can't do anything about that. There's nothing you can do. Drop pod comes in, it lands, you deploy, you start shooting as soon as you get out of the drop pod. So at least you're getting some damage out of this squad. Whereas you don't know if these are just basic Marines, right? You don't know if they're going to make it or not, but their only job there is to hold the objective and then start shooting. Like as soon as they get on the objective, they still got that 24-inch range single fire. I just like the 12 range because you get that double dice. But 9 dice roll on its own, I think that's enough dice weight and that's enough dice output in order to be enough of a threat that the enemy can't ignore it. Not necessarily target it specifically, but it's a matter of you'd have like one group, that maybe is one opponent squad that might be trying to take it out, not the whole army or anything. Like the whole army would, you want to take out the Terminators as quick as possible, right? You want to make sure you get those transports out. That's another thing I want to point out in this video is you don't want to unload your rhinos. If you right, say this paint can is an objective. If I just have my rhino sitting there, it's not claiming an objective, but stuff's gonna batter down on it, and it's gonna get shot up, but it's not really threatened. There's no risk. It's just sitting there doing its thing, not really being harmed in any way, which is really important, because then in turn 5, you open up the door, and then while your guys get out, turn 5, ideally you want to keep this rhino alive as much as possible. Heck, I've had my rhino last up to turn 3, which then it's really hard to actually kill 10 Marines in 2 rounds of shooting. You need to assault them, in my opinion. It's really hard to just shoot them out because they get that 3-up armor save, which is incredibly hard to break. And plus, with being Blood Angels, if they roll to get the Red Thirst off, then they have Feel No Pain, which will give them a 5-up invulnerable save, which makes them extremely hard to kill. Especially since also the Sergeant, he's providing leadership, so as long as they don't lose a Sergeant, it's hard to make them run away. So essentially, it's very good. This little thing right here is very good for holding on an objective. You can really hold an objective for a fair amount of time. And that's the thing, you don't need powerful units in this squad if they're objective holding. This squad, however, the team that's going in the drop pod, that does need to have, the good equipment. But say for example, this is an objective holding one. We swap it out with the flamethrower. Well, I mean, it's good if we get charged, but if we just get shot, and artillery comes after us on this, then we lose that firepower and dice potential, the ability to lay down a flame template, which is a problem. And then it also makes this death ball a little weaker. And say, same thing over here happens over here. You want to you swap it out. Your forces are split. You don't want to split your forces if it's a smaller game. If it's a bigger game, then yes, you do. I do think that what I did was right. Splitting the forces, trying to make sure that you have different angles, because there's just so many guys you got to take out that you really don't have the time to try and focus down one unit when you have so many groups of units coming after them. I mean, you just got to do the best you can, and it's really about adapting more than anything else. So I'd be happy to see, if you guys want to send me your games, what you're doing, what you're trying out with your tactical squads to make them more useful in the battle. What do you think about, just having all of your best equipment in one squad that's designed? It's a suicide squad. This squad's expected to die. You're not gonna survive with this. But maybe you're hoping maybe it'll work out to the point where you can successfully get a lot of damage out before they go down. Alright guys, well I hope you all enjoyed this Warhammer 40k video. As always, I'm your host Elwirfy, and I'll see you guys next time.